Hey again, it's Christina from Sunshine and Flora. So in this video, I want to share with you 10 things that I learned during my second season growing cut flowers. Now, if you're new to my channel, just a little bit of a backstory. I have been a professional photographer going on my 20th year. I have been officially growing cut flowers to sell at farmers markets. I'll be going into my third season. But I have been gardening my entire life. My parents always gardened. My grandma had flowers. When I was out on my own, I had a vegetable garden and lots of flowers. And about 6 or 7 years ago, when I purchased the building where my photography studio is located, I also purchased the lot next to it. That there used to be a building there, but it was then just a empty lot filled with weeds and grass. So I decided I wanted to fence that off and make that a garden full of flowers to use for my photography shoots. Well, when I started doing that, I quickly realized how much I absolutely loved having that garden space, and I kind of always wanted to be part of the farmer's market. So I decided that a lot of those flowers I wanted to grow should be cut flowers. And I started off a couple years ago going to the farmer's market every other week, and it has just snowballed from there. I go to multiple farmer's markets. I do lots of special orders. I also have a florist that I sell to. It has just kind of snowballed. So in this video, I want to share with you 10 important things that I learned last year during my second year selling cut flowers. Also, before I dive into my list, I'm sure that there are some of you that are seasoned flower farmers that may be watching this video, and there are a lot of you that are probably new flower farmers that are watching this video. The seasoned ones, you might laugh when I go through these because some of them will be totally obvious to you. But I hope that the things that I'm sharing with you today, hopefully you will learn something. And I know a lot of you always comment on my videos too, and I learn things from you. So I just think that by sharing, it's a really good resource for all of us. Okay, so these are in no particular order. Also, I grow in Zone 5A. I am in Northwest Iowa. I grow and sell in a very small community, and yeah, that's a little bit more information for you guys. So we'll jump right into number one. And this it's number one, but it's probably also one of the most important things. Start more seedlings than you need. The first year that I was planning out my cut flower garden, I didn't really know what I was doing. And so I kind of estimated based on my bed space how many seedlings were able to fit in that area. And then I started that amount of seedlings. Well, I didn't take into account that there is not 100% germination rate on those seedlings. So I was starting, a couple seeds per cell, but then I would thin them out. And then I didn't actually have enough seedlings to fill the space. So I did get all those spaces filled because I could direct sow things like zinnias and sunflowers. But some of the ones like snapdragons, I would have loved to have more of those, and I did not take into account the percentage rate that I needed to start more of. So now when I go through my garden plan, which I will be sharing that very soon as well, and I'm planning out my beds, I know my exact spacing, and I am able to calculate by the foot exactly how many plants I need per bed space. I will start probably at least 25% more than what I need, because it's always better to have extra seedlings than not enough seedlings. And some of those may germinate, but then they will die off. They're not all going to absolutely make it. So it's better to have more than what you need. Okay, so the second thing that I learned yet again this year, I'm pretty sure this was on my video last year about what I learned. Make sure that the varieties you are growing for cut flowers are tall enough for bouquets. If you're making little jarred arrangements, you can get away with using plants that maybe only get about a foot tall. But if you're doing your market bouquets, you want to have those plants at least 24 inches tall. One of the examples of plants that I learned this with last year was Rudbeckia. I grew a variety called Sahara Rudbeckia, and I think that it says it gets about 12 to 24 inches tall. Mine were on the shorter side, maybe 12 inches tall. Some were maybe 18 inches tall. Those blooms were absolutely beautiful, but a lot of them I was not able to use in my market bouquets. I could use them in jarred arrangements, but mostly what I sell are at my farmer's market. So if I would have paid a little more attention, I would have grown fewer varieties of the Sahara, and I would have grown more varieties of, say, Prairie Sun or Cherokee Sunset, which is another double, and then I would have had more of that particular flower to use in my market bouquets. And so when you're choosing your seeds to grow, make sure you look on the back of the seed packet for the height of the plant. I like to find plants that are at least 24 inches tall, if not 36 inches high or taller. So the third thing that I learned last year that was particularly helpful, not only with time management with my cut flowers, but with balancing it with my photography business, was having a very strict harvest schedule. The farmer's market here in town that I now also manage is on Tuesday afternoons. So I would harvest all of my flowers every Monday. That gave me plenty of time to harvest all those flowers, bring them inside in water. They had a hydration period overnight, and I could easily make all those market bouquets on Tuesday morning to take to the market on Tuesday afternoon. When I was doing special orders, a lot of those were the end of the week. So then I would do another quick harvest on Thursday morning for my weekend harvest. It really streamlined my schedule with the photography business and also my cut flower business, because I was able to say, Monday's harvest day, Tuesday is the market. Also with the florist that I picked up, she preferred things on Tuesday. So then I could tell her, I'm harvesting Monday. Monday afternoon, I will tell you what I have available, and then you will be able to pick those up Tuesday, or I will deliver them to you Tuesday. And then with weekend orders, I would be able to tell people what I would have for the weekend on Thursday. And then also I picked up those bakery orders. I delivered either every 2 or 3 weeks to a bakery to sell bouquets. Those got delivered Thursday afternoon, so I could tie that in with my Thursday morning harvest. So I felt like having very distinct harvest times helped with my planning for the week, but also streamlined my workflow so that I wasn't out there every single morning cutting flowers. And also, if you're giving a little bit of time between harvests, that gives you a few days to have additional flowers open and blooming as well. The fourth thing that I really learned this year was how using landscape fabric is really beneficial in my garden. Last year when I first started, I had a couple areas where I used landscape fabric. Mainly one was a cottage garden area that I treated more as a landscaping area. But the beds where I grew my cut flowers, I didn't really use a lot of landscape fabric. This year, I decided to buy the DeWitt landscape fabric, and I did a whole video on how I planned this out and burned the holes in my landscape fabric. And it is also reusable, so I saved all of this fabric, and I should be able to use it for at least 10 years. But using landscape fabric not only helped me by burning the holes, plan out exactly how many plants I need in those bed space. It kept the soil more moist because it didn't dry out as fast, and it also was a major weed suppressor. That is probably the major factor because, as you know, when you get into summer, the weeds can totally take over your garden, and last year that is what happened, and I spent so much time weeding the garden. This year with the landscape fabric, I spent significantly less time pulling weeds, so I had that time to do other things. So I will probably never again have a bed that does not have landscape fabric on it. So the fifth thing that I learned this year was making sure that the height of your plants are organized throughout your garden so they're not shading each other. One particular example I had trouble with were my dahlias in one spot. I had dahlias in 2 spots in my garden. One spot, they did not grow to their full potential. So in the large middle section, and I'll put a picture up on the screen, the large middle section of my garden, I had 4 rows of zinnias, and then on the west end, I had a row of dahlias. And they were separated by a walkway that was probably about 2 feet wide in between each row. Now, the dahlias on the very west end did not grow as tall as fast as the zinnia plants did. The dahlias were supposed to get just as tall, if not taller, than the zinnias, but the zinnias grew at a faster rate. So those zinnia plants shaded out my dahlia plants. My dahlia plants did not get as tall and they did not put on as many blooms. So I did not get the production out of those dahlia plants that I should have. I also noticed when I dug them up in the fall, their tubers didn't develop as plentiful as they should have. So when you're planning out your garden, make sure that you're really looking at the height of the plants so none of them are going to be shading out each other. So number 6, keep trial plants in separate areas of your garden in smaller beds from the garden that you're relying on for your main cut flowers. So the example that I learned this with last year was basil. I thought basil was going to be the most amazing filler for me and I was going to use it all season long and I was absolutely going to love it. So I devoted an entire bed in my garden to basil. I planted 3 kinds. I planted cinnamon, lemon, and dark opal basil. I thought I was going to love it. I didn't love it at all. I had trouble with it wilting. I didn't care for the look of it as much. The lemon basil I liked better than the others. And the smell to me, I know a lot of people like the smell of basil in their arrangements. I felt it was just a little too strong and I personally just didn't care for it. So I had this entire bed planted with basil that I could have utilized earlier in the spring for something else. So I learned if there is a certain plant that I am trying out for the very first time, no matter how much I think I am going to like it, put it in a different area in a much smaller quantity, and then if I like it, great, I can plant a much larger area of it next year. If I don't like it, I have not wasted a main growing space in my large garden. So number 7, I learned again this year about succession planting. If you're growing in a small area like me, you want to make use of your ground as much as possible. So succession planting is something I try to use as much as possible. Sunflowers are something that I always try to succession plant. I start planting those usually around Memorial weekend, and I try to put a crop in every 2 weeks so that I have a constant harvest. Now, as far as reusing my ground, last year was the first year that I grew tulips to sell as cut flowers, and let me tell you, they were a hit. I am planting 3 times the amount of tulips for this year. But tulips are something that are planted very early, so I have those in one spot of my garden. My hardy annuals will get planted out probably while those are still blooming in another spot in my garden. And then once all of the tulips get harvested, that area will be turned over and my summer crops will go in that area. So I will actually get to use those beds 2 times in 1 year instead of just once. Another area that I used last year a couple times was the area where I grew my buplorum. So I started my buplorum inside and planted that out early. Then I direct sowed another crop of buplorum, which was my second harvest, and then I replanted the area after my first harvest of buplorum was done. I replanted that spot with a Dusty Miller and harvested that in the fall. So I got 2 uses out of that bed as well. So you can really make use of a small space if you succession plant. So make sure to look for plants that are one and done, like buplorum, cress, sunflowers. Check those out and see how you can plant those over the course of the season multiple times. And then check out the early crops versus later crops in your area and see how you can overlap those and use beds actually more than once in a growing season. And I will make sure to do videos this year on what I am succession planting this year and how I am reusing my spaces as well. Number 8, always have fillers to use. When you're making market bouquets, you want to make sure that you have a variety of flowers or foliages in those market bouquets. So you need your filler flowers, you always want to have some accent flowers, and then you always want to have some fillers. That makes a very full looking bouquet. Also, if you're selling to florists, they're going to want a variety of ingredients for their arrangements as well. So I always try to have a lot of fillers to use throughout the entire season. The first year that I grew cut flowers, I didn't really know much about fillers, and I hardly had any at all. I ended up going out and foraging some fillers, and it just didn't work well. So last year I tried to specifically plant items throughout the season that I could use all the way till I had frost. So Bupleurum was a really good one for me. I got multiple plantings out of those. That was one of my favorites, and so I'm really going to bulk up on that this year. I'm going to try different varieties of cress this year. Cress is a one and done, so I will be succession planting those to have those throughout different times. There is a celosia that I use towards the end of the season, and I apologize, I don't know the variety. It's actually one that I got at a garden center. It's got a dark foliage and little pink plumes on the top that get very small that I actually end up cutting off. I use those in September, and that is a good foliage. I also used Mahogany Splendor Hibiscus last year as a fall foliage because it's deep red, and that was the time of year that it was ready for me. Mahogany Splendor Hibiscus, you want to wait and harvest till the stems are very woody, so end of season. So I had the Bupleurum, cress, and then the dark foliages. So I had a really nice spread throughout the entire growing season that I was able to use in all of my market bouquets. Okay, so number 9, if you're selling your cut flowers retail, try to have multiple sales outlets. The first year I sold cut flowers, I primarily sold things at my farmer's market. I did have a few special orders that added to my sales, but I knew I wanted to amp things up for my second year, especially because I was growing a lot more, so I tried to find multiple sales outlets. So these are the different outlets that I happened to sell at last year. Every single Tuesday was our downtown farmers market, and I always either sold out or almost sold out. The second place that I sold was a florist. She's about 20 minutes away, and she would either pick up or I would deliver to her on Tuesdays. And I sold to her multiple times over the course of the summer. I hope to increase that this year by selling to her more and maybe even finding a second florist to sell to. The third sales outlet was, of course, those special orders. I would have one certain customer that would come pick up bouquets every single Friday. I also would get special orders for either delivery or for pickup, either on Fridays or weekends, just for, baby showers or birthdays, things like that. So I would like to also increase those this year. And the last sales outlet that I added last year was a bakery. I partnered with a bakery that was about 25 minutes away, and I did deliveries every 2 to 3 weeks. So I think I delivered there about 6 or 7 times. And I would offer those to her on kind of wholesale pricing so that she could sell those bouquets. They either sold out or almost sold out every single time. So I plan to do those deliveries again this year. Tulips were probably the fastest selling bouquets last year there. So I plan to do more deliveries of the spring flowers this year. Spring is probably the busiest time for, in my opinion, cut flower farmers, because everyone, if you're selling retail, is so hungry and excited for spring that they'll just jump right on the flowers in the spring. So I want to really try to take advantage of that this year with tulips and also daffodils. So this year, by having all of those multiple sales outlets, I was really able to amp up my cut flower sales. For 2023, I also plan to add some subscription memberships. So I'm going to have a spring bouquet subscription, and depending how things go, maybe a summer bouquet subscription, maybe even a fall dahlia subscription if those flowers grow as well as I hope they grow. We'll see how that goes, but that is a 5th sales outlet that I plan to add for 2023. And number 10, the last thing that I learned last year, which was I think one of the things that I learned the year before, is to have multiple options when you're selling at farmers markets. You get all kinds of people coming to farmers markets, and not everyone can use a big bouquet of flowers. So this year I offered a larger bouquet that was either $15 to $20, depending on what I had in season. Earlier in the season when I was selling the tulips and the peonies, which are a higher dollar flower, those were $20. In the summer, when I was doing the zinnias and those type of things, I did $15 bouquets. So that was the large bouquet option. This year I decided to add, or I keep saying this year, we're in 2023. Last year in 2022, I decided to add mini bouquets, and these were $5. These sold like hotcakes. They sold out every single week. And I would have, some people came and got one every week. Kids would come and get them for their moms. I would have other people come and get them that were going to just drop them off as a gift for someone. The $5 bouquets were such a good price point, and they sold every single time. The other benefit of the $5 bouquets was because they were the little miniature bouquets, I was able to use some of the flowers in my garden that I was not able to use for my regular market bouquets. So I could cut some of the shorter zinnias, shorter dahlias, shorter rudbeckia. I used a lot of my end of the season shorter feverfew, and I could make these little cute bundles and make that additional income with flowers that usually wouldn't be able to go into my market bouquet. So that was a really good way to add extra sales also. Back in 2021, I offered straight snapdragon bunches, and those I sold for $10. So this year, I hope to do that again. In 2022, I wasn't able to do that because I didn't have enough snapdragons to do so. I used that third snapdragon bed as my basil bed, which, as I talked about earlier, did not work out as well. So this year, I'm going to be growing way more snapdragons. So hopefully I will have not only more for the straight snapdragon bunches, but more snapdragons to sell to my florist also. This year, actually, I'll be growing more snapdragons outdoors, but I will also be growing them in my hoop house. So stay tuned for my whole hoop house plan. But offering multiple items at a farmer's market, I feel like really helped improve my sales. Now, if you have seen my videos for my big end of the year market, I did a 3-part series this year. It was called My Biggest Market. There is a huge market that I do down in Anthon, Iowa that draws thousands of people. This year I did $25 large bouquets. I did $15 jelly jar bouquets. And then I added pumpkins to my booth this year. And I took, I think, 16 $25 bouquets, 82 $15 jelly jar bouquets, and about 300 pumpkins. I came home with 15 little pumpkins. That's it. It was absolutely incredible. So by having the variety of products in my booth, it not only made my booth look better, but I was able to appeal to a wider variety of customers. Okay, so that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about what I learned in my second year cut flower farming. I know there's probably people watching this video that have been flower farming for years, and maybe you're laughing at me by what I've learned. And maybe there's some of you that are watching this for the first time and just starting your first year, and you learned something from me. So I hope that is the case, and I will continue to share my cut flower farming adventures with you guys. Hoping you learned something, and just by sharing, I am learning from you guys as well, because a lot of you will comment and I learn things, and it's just a really great community that we all have here on social media and by being able to share things with others. So anyway, now I'm starting to ramble, but I really hope you learned something through this video, and stay tuned for a lot more through the winter and of course into spring. I am so excited to get all of my seeds started. So I cannot wait for the next few weeks when I actually get to do that. So stay tuned for a lot more. We'll see you soon.